Welcome back, guys. In this video, we'll be talking about stacks, okay? So what is a stack? A stack is basically a last in, first out data structure, right? So last in, first out. Okay, so think about it. Let me actually grab a pen and let me annotate. So how it would work is if we have a stack like this, right? If we add an element in, right, it'll get added here, right? So that'll be our A element, which is our last element, right? And then if we remove that, that's our first out element. And then if we add a new element on top, right? And this is our A, and then this is our B. And we add another element on top into our stack, and it's our C, right? This becomes our last in. So C was basically our last in element and first out, right? So if we want to remove an element from the stack, it would come from the top over here of the stack. So it's basically a last in, first out data structure, right? So basically the data items are retrieved in the opposite order to which they are placed in the stack. It is not necessarily a linked data structure, but can be implemented as a linked list. So linked list is something that we'll be covering soon. It is defined with two basic operations, the inserting of an item and the removing of an item, okay? Cool. So let us talk about the different operations you can do with the stack. So only the most recently inserted objects can be removed, right? And then one can push or pop a data item from the stack. So we can push an item. So these are the different functions, right? If you push an item, it'll push it to the stack. And then if you pop the item, so if you do if you do object.pop, it'll remove the item from the top of the stack, right? And one can only peek at the stack. So if you want to peek at the stack, it's only going to return the element that's at the top of the stack. So yeah, so look at an item on the top of the stack without removing it. Sometimes called a read ahead, right? So one can also check whether the stack is empty, right? So these are different stack operations that we have, right? So what we'll be doing is we'll be implementing stacks using two ways, right? So we'll be implementing a stack using an array, and we'll be implementing the stack using Java's stack class, right? So basically, in our stack implementation using an array, we specify the maximum size of an array n, right? And then we'll create the stack S with size n. So don't get afraid if this is not making sense. I'll create a separate video where we'll actually dive into the implementation of this and we'll create it together, okay? So that'll be a code along, so I'll expect you guys to also code along while you're watching the video. So you can pause and then you can code along, right? So essentially how it'll work is we'll create a stack S with size n. So S will be our array, like we're calling it a stack, but it's essentially an array. And then we'll create an instance variable T at the top, like T, so to indicate the top, to indicate top element in array S. And we'll instantiate that as -1 because initially the array is empty, right? And we're using zero indexing. Arrays are zero indexed, so we'll instantiate it as -1. So the moment we add an element, our T will change to 0, right? So the stack operations, size will basically return T plus 1, again, because we have zero indexed arrays. If we do T plus 1, we'll get the size of the stack. Empty is going to check if we have a top element, right? So if the top element is less than 0, it's going to return true or false, right? And then peek means if it's not empty, right, it's going to return that element that's at the top. So peek means you want to see what's at the top. So it's only a read function. So it'll just return that. And then push means we're going to actually create a function that will allow us to add an element. So we'll have to change our T. We'll have to put an element into our array and assign that with the value that has been added. And then pop means that we're going to remove the item. If it's not, only if the array is not empty, we're going to actually remove the item. So we're going to change T, right? And then we're just going to return, we're going to return S of T. So the T is basically, what the pop function also does, it returns the element that it's actually removing from the array, right? So I think since we're using the array, we're actually just going to play around with T. We're not actually going to remove it from the array. But this will all make much more sense in the next video. So basically in the next video, I'll be going through the code implementation of this. and we'll initialize a repository. We'll create this together using an array, and it'll be super fun. It's going to be a code along, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching this video.